students are gone, but you are still here. And we know how you feel because you are done. But you have so much work to do to get ready for tomorrow. Good afternoon, podcast listeners everywhere. Welcome to After the Bell, a Stunt Brothers production. A podcast that gets inside the life of a teacher and provides a wellness guide for being prepared to take on this most challenging of professions. I'm Martin Stuvel.
And I'm Roy Hunt. And we share your pain, having taught a combined 70 years. The guarantee of this podcast is to make you laugh, make you think, and give you at least one little nugget that you can use in the classroom. So get out your marking, organize your supplies, or just pour yourself a coffee.
I want something stronger.
And listen, engage, and interact with After the Bell, a podcast for you, the hard-working, dedicated teacher who wants free lesson plans, free advice, and a free meal.
Okay, Roy, but I'm not paying for anything more than McDonald's. Okay, here we are, Mr. Hunt. Are you all set?
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
To,
I just surprised. I pressed that record button. I should do with my fingers. 5, 4, 3,
It's
2,
not going to help.
1.
I just have to breathe.
Okay.
I'm going to laugh through this whole episode.
Okay, stay calm. Be strong.
I like laughing, though. It makes me feel good, but I know sometimes
You're
it
just
helps
so
to-
excited that this
helps
is
to be
episode
focused.
6 of season 2.
There we go.
Episode 36 altogether.
I'm 36.
Yeah.
I've taught for 36 years. Did
Really?
you know that?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know, it's crazy.
36 years.
Yeah.
You made it, and we made it here. We're in the box. We didn't the cycle. And it's not
because you're afraid of the poop truck.
It's not because of the poop truck from last week. It's stormy out there.
Yes.
It's a torrential downpour, and the weather is very stormy. And we said, today we will drive. Right?
Yes, we
And
did.
We got here,
Yes.
and we're dry.
So it's stormy, and I am calm.
There you go.
There you go.
Wow, such a beautiful contrast.
It is a contrast.
Because the world is, so the weather is stormy. The world is stormy.
The world is stormy.
There's Stormy Daniels.
There's Stormy Daniel.
I don't know. There's a lot of storms going on, right?
And there's a Hurricane Imelda, that's heading towards Bermuda right now.
And yet you're so calm.
I am.
Wow, I'm really impressed that you stay calm despite these stormy waters and this stormy weather, right?
I can't control the weather, so you control what you can control.
Really?
And I can control myself.
Wow, you're so resilient.
Yes.
You're so resilient.
I'm trying to be, yes.
I think we very quickly,
That was fast.
Usually it takes us 10, 15 minutes to get ourselves to the topic and the theme, but we hit upon
I think
storm.
we have the theme.
So what's our theme? Because I think you found it. I think we've hit upon our theme very quickly.
Our theme is resiliency, staying afloat in stormy weather.
Yeah, and stormy weather, whether it's the world, whether it's the weather outside, but we need to maybe go on a field trip.
Yes.
We've done a lot of homework. I think we have not had a field trip
we haven't
this
had
year.
field trip this
year. We
year.
haven't had a guest come on.
Yeah.
So this will be our first guest for season 2. And I think we, of course, our themes often have to do with resiliency and staying strong. But I think it'd be wonderful to talk to someone else. So
Someone who knows more than us?
is that possible?
Oh, maybe it's just someone who has maybe
different way.
different perspective.
That will make us have
a different lens of viewing things.
And that will engage us in a wonderful, wholesome conversation about
and then we
resiliency.
can share our knowledge in a discussion.
Wow,
so,
I'm feeling so calm. Your
it's very
calmness
nice.
is just
very
so
calm.
zen. So who are we seeing?
We
for
are
this?
going to talk to Scott Orth.
Okay.
And he's a mindfulness coach
Okay.
and the owner of Mindful Wisdom. And we're going to discuss with him being resilient and in the hope of finding out, well, what does it mean to be resilient?
Yeah, and it's a word we throw about a lot nowadays, but can we actually find a way to achieve it, right? So let's have him come in the box. We're actually going to invite him here. He's going to join us, and we're just going to wait for Scott and then have our conversation. Really looking forward to this.
Me too. Here we are. We're on a field trip with Scott Orth
Yay,
from Mindful Wisdom. And in our field trip, we always like to have our guests get comfortable by asking them our ABC, 1, 2, 3.
Bit of an icebreaker.
An icebreaker.
Yeah. Okay.
And so
before we get deep into the topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to ask Scott, I'm going to ask you the ABC, and Martin is going to continue with 1, 2, 3.
And kind of just bring in what first pops into your head. There's no right or wrong. It's just, that's what I'm thinking. And maybe sometimes you want both the answers. That's okay too. You don't have to choose one or the other.
You can say both.
Okay. Okay, here we go.
Okay. A, espresso or Americano?
Americano. Yeah, without a doubt.
Without
Had
a
one
doubt.
today.
Okay. A good hazy IPA or a double IPA?
I'm gonna pick a not hazy IPA.
I'm a hazy IPA.
Yeah?
I like the hazy IPA.
And double's just too much, man.
Yes. Yes.
So agree. Yeah.
8.5.
Yes.
And okay.
Okay. Meditation or journaling?
Again, both would be my answer, but I think meditation of the two.
Meditation of the two.
If I had to pick one, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now we go for 1, 2, 3. What was your favorite book as a child?
Probably Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you like the movies?
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Better
Yeah,
than
like
the
brought
early-
it. Yeah.
Better than the earlier attempt with
Yes.
the cartoon and stuff.
Yes. The Hobbit. Yeah. The first. Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, how do you put Tolkien onto the screen? But they pulled it off. I
They
guess.
did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I still go back to it once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, number 2. If you only had one piece of music you could listen to for the rest of your life, you don't have to play it over and over and over again, but there's one piece only. What is there one you would choose?
I love music, and so that's a hard one. I'm gonna go Coldplay,
Okay.
and then a song. Up and Up.
Okay.
It's just sort of almost a gospel-y, spiritual. Yeah.
I think they're one of the last bands that still have that full stadium feel to their music that you just don't get anymore. I find with
Once you've been, I saw them live, and then you listen to their music afterwards. You can hear how they write it for the stadium.
They do, yeah.
And they write it to sing along with 50,000 people.
absolutely, yeah. And number 3, when you grew up, did you have a favorite teacher first of all? Can you think of a favorite teacher? Because if you can, we'd love to know about your favorite teacher and what made them stand out. But maybe you don't have one.
So I grew up in very rural southern Ontario, and so the teaching in that day was different than than today. And so I would go to, it was also a friend of the family as well, Norm Ryder.
Oh.
So he taught shop, and so Norm was just a very fun, engaging, and again, it was shop class, but he made shop. He made actually the school fun.
Okay.
He was a very engaged teacher at that time.
What did he do that made it so fun? Like he just what kind
I
of
joked
engagement?
and teased.
Yeah.
He wasn't too serious about it all. Yeah.
He seemed real. Like some
He seemed
teachers,
real. Yeah.
Sometimes they keep that distance between you two, and
Totally.
some teachers just you get to know them as
Yeah.
humans, and you go, "Oh, okay." I think.
Yeah, no, Norm was a human.
Okay.
Yeah, very
Good.
much.
So, ready for our chat?
Absolutely.
We love to have these chats. And,
Yeah, great to be here.
I'll just give a little intro. We kind of wrote that today's discussion is about resilience. A 2024 study found that nearly half of Ontario teachers reported moderate or severe emotional exhaustion, while another broader study indicated up to 40% of teachers felt emotionally exhausted. Teaching is certainly a rewarding career, but one that often results in physical and emotional exhaustion. The issue of teacher burnout has been hotly discussed in education, and simply advertising both new and experienced teachers to be more resilient is insufficient if they lack the necessary tools to foster it. We're talking to Scott Orth, a mindfulness coach and the owner of Mindful Wisdom, in the hope of learning more about what it means to be resilient. And we appreciate you don't necessarily come from a pure education background, and that's actually what we want, right? Because we also want people listening who aren't necessarily teachers, because we all need resilience, right?
Mm-hmm. Great. So I'm really looking forward to this opportunity to have this discussion with you, because a few years back, it was reversed, where you were in my classroom and you were having a discussion with me about in a parent-teacher interview.
Mm-hmm.
So this is nice to turn the tables.
Sure.
So, Scott, you've been on a journey. You were in the I guess you had a lengthy career in the corporate world for about 27 years, and then you made a big change, and here you are today representing mindful wisdom.
Yeah.
And could you tell us a little bit about that journey?
So for the sake of the listeners, I'll try and keep it to the short version because these journeys usually do have a longer story behind them. So when I was a hydrogeologist working in a consulting engineering company, so I did groundwater surveys, studies, assessments for clients. Did that for many years and then moved into management, upper management, and at the end of my career was doing leadership development. And then the company went through a difficult time. It was heavily into resources in the oil and gas and mining. And around 2013, 2012, there was a lot of challenges with that business or that side of the business. And so at that point, the company was struggling. And some of the overhead costs, like leadership development, get put on hold indefinitely. And there was also a lot of cost cutting happening in terms of people leaving the company. And so for me, it was this wasn't an obvious passion, and it was an outcome of a difficult time. And do I stay in a company and reinvent myself actually go back to the trenches, which was the work I used to do but didn't love, or do I find a path forward on my own doing the work I love? Not an easy decision. And so there was definitely a leap of faith. I didn't have a great business plan. I had a lot more hope than I did in terms of a plan. And this whole thing called mindful wisdom actually wasn't the original plan. The original plan was to do what I was doing as leadership development in that organization in helping other organizations. But that turned out to be harder than I thought. And so I had this little side project, which was mindfulness training. And I started to offer that. And then it became clear that this finding my way back into a different corporate environment was going to be more challenging. The side hustle became the main gig, and it's evolved immensely in the last 10 years. So serendipitously, this September is 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Congratulations.
10 years on this path, and it was pretty feeble. I look back at what I was doing 10 years ago. It was pretty humbling and feeble beginnings, like anybody, right? You just start the first steps in a journey.
But don't you find journeys often are the best when they're kind of because you had to make that change or something happened that kind of made you have a leap of faith? You had to? When people are comfortable and they try to make a change, I find it doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When you go, oh, what do I do now? Or I need something different. Obviously, that was within you, right? That desire. But you had to discover it at that moment. Maybe you couldn't have done it another time.
There was a moment of reckoning where it's to fork in the road. Which path, because both paths were optional. I could have stayed and found a path in. It wasn't my favorite choice. Or I could have taken this path, which was the more preferred path, but had higher risk. And they both had risk, honestly. Every path has some risk. And so, that was definitely an introspective, reflective point. And I will say also, for anybody who's thinking about making choices like this, neither are easy. Both have risk and neither are easy. Right. Yes. And in this case, this path wasn't all fun and games roses and unicorns all the way along.
Those are the best paths, though, right?
The learnings the lessons are rich. Yeah. Yes, the lessons are rich.
So, what do you consider yourself to be a lifelong learner then in that
Absolutely.
Capacity?
Yeah. Almost to a fault. If you ask my wife,
why to a fault?
Well, I think you can get obsessed with self-improvement and self-learning. I think there's a point, and that's actually been part of the transition. I will say I'm much more at peace with who I am, not needing to constantly improve everything all the time. I think there's a point, and maybe that's age and stage and maturity, where you get to a point where you're like, I don't know, I've learned an awful lot, and I've seen this movie before. Every book seems like it offers new promise, and then you finish the book, and you read another book, and you read another book, and so you start another.
It's a double-edged sword, because I'm definitely that way too. But I've always sometimes looked at those that they just seem to be happy, and they don't feel this need to constantly change or improve. Their lives seem a lot easier.
Simpler.
Right?
Simpler, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a restlessness that comes with a lifelong learner. Yeah. And pursuing something, and getting clarity, I think, around what is it we're pursuing, and will we ever get there? And I think, I'm probably at a stage now where it's more about the journey. I don't think I'm going to find the Holy Grail, even though I thought I came close a couple times. Like, this is it. This is the big one. This is the Grail. And no, I think the journey is everything.
Yeah.
Okay. So in our discussion about resilience, I'd like to know, what does resilience mean to you? And how do you define it in your life?
Yeah, so I think for me, in very simple terms, is just I think of what's not resilient would be fragile.
Okay.
And so resilient is, maybe the opposite of fragile in that it isn't broken easily. And I think for me as a person, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, that it's hard being human. It's hard being a human in the world. And then I'll say here we are in 2025, maybe even more so now in different ways than it might have been in the past. But it's always been hard being human. And that's both an outer world responding to circumstances and people around you. But I think a lot of the resilience is the inner world, the stories and the inner self-talk that comes with my interpretation of that outer world. And so while life can throw you some pretty good curveballs and challenges, I think the resilience is how do you adapt to those, and then what's the inner game that you're playing and through that. So it's the ability to not be fragile. And I think this goes to the self-improvement piece. That became almost lauded, that, people who are resilient are looked up to and held up. And it was looked almost as weakness if you exposed yourself or vulnerable in any way. And I think I've come full circle on that too, that vulnerability and owning how hard it is to be human at times, grief, loss, things suck today. Like just all of that, I think that's, real as opposed to toxic positivity and pretending that everything's fine all the time.
Don't you find it's changing? I used to be like, you didn't dare show any of that. And now people actually look upon those people that expose that to be actually more resilient. Because some of those that come across is, I found my whole life as overconfident and nothing seemed to faze them. Inside, they're often pretty insecure. They're dealing with all kinds of stuff, but they're so afraid of showing it.
Very much.
And now I don't think we trust those people as much. We've seen a few examples worldwide or leadership and that, and we tend to trust those people that are honest.
Yeah. Well, and Brené Brown did some great work on, vulnerability and just bringing that into the forefront for people, or bring it into, I'll say, the social conversation, that it's okay to be, and particularly as leaders, to expose yourself. And there's a line between showing your vulnerabilities and sharing your drama, and too much information, and so each of us has to find that line. But being real, like not just really being real about who you are and how you're doing, and I think that comes with some self-awareness too.
Can you think of a specific situation where you've demonstrated resilience in your life?
In the last day, hours. So I'm a parent.
From a parent.
So as a parent, literally, you are constantly being challenged to show your resilience, and it's over the smallest of things. So the latest, I've got teenagers now, not the kids that Roy would have taught when they were in grade 4. But it's just the simple things like, can you clear your bowl from the dining room table after you've been asked? And these are teenagers, so you can count how many times, or imagine how many times they've been asked. And so that may seem almost trivial, but as parents, these little things get under our skin. So that, that's, I'll say, it's constant. Bigger ones, certainly the biggest challenge when our kids were little. There was, some just more deeper challenges at that time, just anxiety and showing up in difficult behaviors. I think that tested me huge, both my wife and I, and tested us at a level of resilience because you're dealing with somebody who's very young, and so it's hard for them. It's hard to have an adult conversation or rational conversation around big emotions. And so your teachers, anybody who's dealing with primaries, will understand that these kids do not have a fully developed brain, and that it's very difficult to work with big emotions in a child. So that would have been a huge test of resilience. But then just all the time, as a solopreneur, sending messages, reaching out to clients. And then I just spoke with a client today.
Yeah.
Hadn't heard from them in 2 years. And I probably sent out 10 emails and voicemails in that time. Ghosted for 2 years. And you can imagine the stories my brain would tell because I was doing work for them. And, what did I say the last time I spoke to their group? What did I do wrong? How come they won't even talk to me? And, you can fill that in with all kinds of story. I have no idea in the end. In the end, they were busy. That was it. They were very busy.
And this explanation, right?
They were just very busy, perhaps not keeping up well on their own end, maybe not coping well themselves. And so my email was way down the list. They didn't have bandwidth to even respond to me once to say, sorry, we're really busy. And so I made a big story about that. And can I be resilient to keep going? And not interpret that as a big measure of my worth or my work or how I did last time.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I was brought back to a few emails that I had sent out to parents as a teacher, and taking that time to craft something so that it would be perfect and send it out there because I'm really concerned about their child, and nothing. And then send it back again. Hi, it's just checking in. And then the stories that you start feeding yourself, and you get into this loop of what have I done wrong, right? Sometimes
what are they thinking?
Really think and overthinking, and then it's just that a week later you get really sorry. There is a problem at home, and I didn't have time to deal with the email because in their world that email was not a priority, but it was for me.
Yeah. Well, and the care and attention that you were putting into it, right, in similar in my situation, but as teachers, the care and attention that's extra, right, that you reach out to the parent. The care and attention you put into that hoping for a positive response or some response. Yeah. And then to have nothing.
Yeah, I think you both hit upon, how busy people are sometimes, especially now. So how do you find time to look after yourself? Because we live in an age where it's not like it was, right? And people do not take the time to think about what their needs are. I think especially when, the irony is, even though, there was the stay-at-home mom in the 50s and 60s, and kids did not have parents that did as much as parents do nowadays, for example. Parents are busier than ever. People are involved in so many things that I don't think there's a lot of self-care. So how do you find the time? How do you make it in this busy world where people are stressed out, aren't even answering emails from teachers and other people because they can't fit it in? How do you find the time?
Yeah, so how long do we have? Yeah. Because this is a big topic, right? Yes. That's why we're here.
We want it in 1 minute. Here we go. We found the secret.
The sound, the Holy Grail. Who knew this guy would have it? And so this is the work I do, is helping people, busy professionals, teachers included, would be, how do you find the time? And I think it comes back to, prioritization and understanding the mechanics that the levers you have available to you. How are you going to show up tomorrow if you are not taking care of yourself today? And that, is the oxygen mask first.
Yes.
Do you put yours on first so that you can now put the child's mask on? Because if you're gone, now nothing else is happening. And so I see myself, my whole pursuit of taking care of myself at some level. There's ideals. There's a top. If life was great and we could go to yoga this many times a week and we could do our meditation or we could do our run or get all these hours of sleep and have all the wonderful things that we think make our resilience or our capacity higher. Great. But then there's a bottom, there needs to be a bottom to that. And I think that's where people kind of just go through the bottom and they're not sort of maintaining a level. And I think of it, having seen, just the ebbs and flows of life. You don't know what's happening. You don't know what's around the corner tomorrow. And life may throw you a curveball that's bigger than you were ready for. And so what have you got? And if your bandwidth is maxed out already, how are you going to respond to that? And the answer is most people will respond poorly. They'll find their own coping mechanisms. And they will cope, but they won't coming back to the word resilient, I think you're in a very risky place at this point, very vulnerable in an unhealthy way to, I'll say, inappropriate coping skills, inappropriate behavior, mental health, physical health, damage to your relationships, financial risk, your career risk. There's a whole bunch of risk that is now exposed when your capacity to deal with the challenges life is throwing at you, and it will, is grossly diminished.
Yeah, I found when I was in the MPTA office that the people I dealt with most were people that didn't have that left in them, and some life thing came along, whether it was an illness, a divorce, something, and that's where they fell apart. They didn't have any grain of resilience left in them to deal with those bigger issues that we're all going to face at some time.
Yeah, aging parents.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Changes in career. And again, we live in a world, I think all of this becomes even more essential today. So if we just talked about age and stage and going through life's cycle or life's different stages, and children aging and empty nesters and aging parents and health issues that show up for you, we'd have lots. And then if we just added work to that, we'd have lots. And then you live now in a world that has very increased uncertainty in terms of political instability, social divisiveness, climate change. We can keep going, right? And so there's a whole AI technology adding to a whole new level of both hope and uncertainty for all of us. And that's the water that we swim in, is all of that uncertainty on top of all of the other stuff. And so I see this conversation around resilience is more important than ever, because all of us are living in a time where we will be tested almost every day or week.
So then if resilience were to be a toolbox, what would the tools be in that box that we would be able to get to help us?
There's lots, and I think for each of us, it's finding the tools that work for you.
Exactly. Yep.
And when I'm teaching people, there's some that I think people they underappreciate, and so I start with even awareness. So I sometimes like to include an experience in my conversation as opposed to just words, right? So because the listener would be able to do this too. So if you close your eyes for a moment and just imagine yourself, and listener too, unless you're driving. Imagine yourself walking through the woods, and it can be like a beautiful, quiet woods, one that you feel very safe, comfortable in, and there's nobody else around at this moment, and your eyes are just scanning the surroundings, taking it all in. Your mind is at rest. Everything's very peaceful, and then all of a sudden behind you, off in the woods, you hear a large branch break. Instantly. What's happening in your body in that moment? And you can open your eyes and come back, and you guys tell me, like in that moment, what just happened, that just with one sound in your environment?
Right. The hairs jumped up on my back of my neck.
Yeah. I just wondered right away what is causing that sound, right?
Absolutely.
Is it an animal? What is it?
And let's add to it. Let's say your natural reflex is to orient towards that sound, and you see something large and black moving through the underbrush. And so now every hair is standing up because now you're exposed, you're vulnerable. And so that's fight or flight. And so the reason I put fight or flight is very real. And that's an old survival mechanism. And there's a part of your brain, unconscious processors, that are always on alert, listening for every change or threat in your environment. And so it really comes down to now, what do we do in that moment? So awareness is first, like in that moment of fight or flight triggered in that reactive state, are you even aware that you're reactive, or are you just running madly through the woods screaming? Can you compose yourself or gather, or at least notice how the level of agitation you are? So as a parent, can you notice the level of emotional agitation you have over your child? As a teacher who's frustrated with your class this particular day, can you notice how high the emotions are and how triggered you are and how close you are to fight or flight? So some of the work that I do with people, and this is where meditation and breathing tools help, is just, can you even be aware of the state that you're in? Because now that we're aware, now we have something we can work with. But unaware, unconscious, and purely reacting, we're all now at risk of going with what we know, going with what might have, just going with our reflexes. And they'll work to a degree, depending on what your reflexes are, depending on your upbringing, depending on your beliefs. So that's where I start, is awareness, and we can develop. So a toolbox would be tools that help you build that. Meditation is a practice that helps that. Self-awareness, just noticing when you are triggered, something sets you off, somebody cuts you off. Your coffee latte doesn't show up quite the way you like or on time. Like how how escalated are you? And it's like, ooh, look at that. Look at how, emotional or agitated I am over this.
Don't you find so many people, obviously fight or flight exists for an evolutionary reason. You're being chased by a lion. You need to have some flight going on. Some people automatically go to that level, even if their latte is late, right?
Totally.
So how do you stop yourself going to a 10 when really this is a 1 or 2?
Yeah, and so this is where some of the other tools start to come in, and it's it's a mindset. So often I go to mindset. How do you perceive the latte? Is the latte the worst thing that is going to happen to you today? And even a child who's having a meltdown, that may be a bigger issue to deal with in the classroom. On the scale of things, is that really a threat?
Right.
Is that really a threat to your survival, where you need to engage full fight or flight response, which is, to be clear, your vision narrows on the threat, so your world diminishes around. You become very sensitive and focused on the threat. Your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, cortisol is released, adrenaline is released, all ready for a battle. And so you are primed and loaded and ready for this. So just how you see that. And so in psychology, they will call it, the threat response versus a challenge response. Is that latte or the person who cut me off, is that really a threat, or is that a threat to my ego, or a threat to my certainty, or a threat to my status, or however you want to see that? In the classroom, a threat to power dynamics and parent-child. I mean, most of my issues were around threat to my power dynamic, believing I had, the lever, the hammer, and the child doesn't, and they're not responding to my hammer. So I bring out bigger hammer, bigger consequences, louder voice, more screaming and stomping, all of these things. So the tool set here is mindset shifting, perspective shifting. Are you a victim, or are you somehow able to respond to this challenge? Are you threatened by this, or is this a challenge to level up your game and see what you can do in this moment? And this isn't easy in the moment. This is where mental rehearsal, scenario envisioning, getting up in the morning knowing that your children will challenge you. Can you see yourself going through that in your mind's eye? And then when the challenge comes, see yourself responding more graciously, more maturely. There is an adult in the room. Right. And can you find that response? Because it'll look different than the usual reflexive, reactive shouting or whatever your normal behavior is. So now you're primed to respond differently. So awareness first, and awareness is it's a tool, self-awareness, and you can build that through practice, just noticing how you feel in this podcast. How are you doing?
Yes.
How are you sitting? Yeah. So that's self-awareness.
Yeah.
When you're in different environments, how am I doing? Am I at ease in this environment, or am I not? And then mindset, if I'm perceiving threats, are they really a threat? And, we can all use, there's plenty of places in the world right now. As soon as you think of the people in Ukraine, are any of my issues really an issue? And that doesn't mean that I don't feel them, but I can sort of bring them down many notches, and then, okay, how do I respond to this? And I've got I'll pause there for a moment if there's anything you guys want to add to that, but I've got other tools that then come in once you've sort of become aware of threat versus...
I was just thinking of, it's really mindfulness, right? And really being aware of ourselves. But don't you think part of the problem is we don't find those quiet moments, whether it's meditation, whatever it is, going for a walk, where, we're on our social devices, our brain's going all the time. Our brain's exhausted. So do you think that is part of the reason why we're seeing more people that are having trouble coping? Because we're not finding quiet moments in the day to sometimes just even be bored.
Absolutely.
I say that with kids too. Sometimes they just be in a car and be bored, because then they'll look outside at the window. They don't need to have a screen in front of them all the time the moment you get into that car. But I see that happening, and I go, where are the creative thinkers going to come from if we don't have moments of being bored.
Oh, they'll just type into the ChatGPT
Yeah,
prompt,
no.
right?
Right.
All creativity is lost, handed over.
Yes.
Here's the keys.
Yeah.
I think we are, and let's stay with the listeners first, because it's easy to see this in the children. And what's the fellow's name who wrote the recent book, Anxious Generation?
Oh, Jonathan Haidt?
Jonathan
Yes.
Haidt,
Yeah.
And so again, that's done well and sort of
Yeah.
bringing to awareness. But what about the anxious parents, the anxious
Yeah.
teachers, the anxious adults that are around us? And I think the feeds that most people allow their brain to
Yep.
be exposed to are only going to create anxiety.
Yeah.
So I'm very choosy as to how much social media, news media I take in. I'm very careful. I generally take it in radio because radio is very different than visual. I'm sensitive visual. I don't scroll very much. Like I generally just try to, because I see it as like junk food for my brain and just disrupting my nervous system and putting me on an alert of all these dangers and threats out there when I'm already dealing with just my life.
Right. Yeah.
So I think there is a lack of people, and it's, we could spend a whole episode on dopamine and what's going on here in terms of that. But one of the, again, a tool set that I would say is leaving yourself more space. And it does feel boring.
Yeah.
But boring, there's lots of people now arguing.
celebrate boring.
Yes, there's people arguing for and celebrating bringing back boredom, both to the younger kids and to adults, because that's where your mind, it is uncomfortable at first. But if you sit with it, your mind spools up and ideas start to flow. And you can, and what happens in that space that so many people I think are missing is reflection. Like, what's going on in my world? What am I, what ideas are, how am I connecting the dots? What do I care about? Where am I doing well? Where am I off? What's changing for me? What's changing in this stage? Like, as the kids are empty nesters, what's changing for me and my partner? How are all these things changing? If you're in a feed all the time, there's no space for that reflection. And I think we're seeing and experiencing a generation that's lost reflection. And that can be alone. I yesterday went for a walk and talk with a friend. Another great way to, a tool in the toolbox is walk and talk with somebody. And that can be just talk on the phone.
One of the best
but,
therapies you can
But
do.
walking in nature side by side with somebody and just catching up on your life and their life, there's connection, there's belonging, there's thinking out loud, there's perspective shifting, because often when he's complaining about something, I'll tease him, oh, that's the same in my household, and maybe it's not as big a deal as he thinks it is. And if I'm complaining, he'll do exactly the same thing, and I realize it's happening in every household in North Vancouver right now.
And you're not the only one.
You're not.
And because you're not the only one, then somehow in sharing those thoughts, there's a collect. You can almost sigh with relief, going like, "Oh, it's not just me."
Yeah.
And then you start. I think you go from that anxiety, that fight or flight, which is backward thinking, and then when you start talking about it, you start moving forward, right? And you start sharing maybe strategies or ideas, or just think, do you know what, this feels so good. Let's do this again.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a path forward.
That's a path forward and out of the stress. And I think we've lived, this is where I'd say the self-improvement piece it was a disservice, it was very much about the individual. And you getting better, right? And there's a whole bunch of people, Tony Robbins, and they've done well to help people empowerment, self-empowerment, find their way. And the challenge with that is it's so much about the self, right? Like we forget that who we really are as a species. Like we're a social species and we need each other and belonging and connection. And so we live in a world of libraries filled with self-help books that you read or listen to by yourself. And what we really need is to, that whole bowling alone versus bowling together or being part of clubs or communities and things like that. Walking and talking with somebody, helping people is therapy. You could put that in your toolbox, just connection with others.
I've always been amazed. I always thought that would be the best way to do therapy, and you don't hear about it enough, where a therapist just does walk and talks, right? I'm sure it's done out there, but I think knowing myself, anytime I've gone with a friend and we just talk about things or anyone else is having an issue, like there's a calm that comes out of that you just wouldn't get if you sat around sitting in your living room or in a coffee shop talking to them, right?
And so just staying on the toolbox a little longer, like how do you ritualize that then? So you've had that positive experience. Let me ask you a question. Do you have somebody who you walk and talk with regularly now?
Not regularly, no.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
And
So that's, yeah.
So this
excellent
is
question.
noticing where...
Well, actually, you know what? My wife and I do all the time.
Okay,
That,
so that counts.
yeah, it does count. Sorry, dear.
Yeah, she's listening.
Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
right? So you're lucky you have a
Yeah.
partner who you can walk and talk with.
And I find if we haven't done it for a couple of weeks, we get
Need
off it. We need it. We
Yeah.
really need it. Yeah. Yeah.
So part of your toolbox needs to be noticing what works, and then you mentioned coming back to space is prioritizing that. And there are so many jazzy, headline-grabbing things to take your attention away to other places. And this is the hard work. This is where a little willpower comes in. But knowing what works for you and saying no to the candy, to the dazzle, that the feeds and everything else present. And this is the hardest part for most people. And saying yes to what seems pretty dull and boring at the beginning, a walk and talk. But once you do it, and you do both, most of us know, like you go down the scroll feed, the doom scroll, you feel emptier at the end and exhausted, depleted. You go for the walk and talk, and somehow you come back and you've got energy to do something.
Yeah. For me, the big thing for me is gardening. Gardening brings a calm for me, and that's where I'll take my phone, I'll put it at the other end of the house, and I'm outside. The phone's not with me. And so I know for myself, because I'm like everyone else. We can't just blame kids online. If I have that phone in front of me, I'm scrolling. I'm picking up the news of the world, and it's just getting me worked up, and I am not calm. So I just put that away, and I get out of there.
Yeah, you create a boundary based on a value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have a value around that calm, and you prioritize that, and then you know you're weak. You know, that's the issue, is to really accept your weakness and own it, like how hard it is to be a human, how everybody else is struggling along with you, and that we're all weak. And, Silicon Valley understands our weaknesses.
They've worked it out.
They've worked it out. They have the behavioral scientists, and so they've worked it out. And so know that weakness is there, and then create a boundary that's based on your values and what's important to you.
So I know one of the things I love is in my family, what we do is when we get together and we'll have a quick dinner and games night. All the devices are off to the side.
Beautiful.
I even put on some vinyl.
Exactly.
Right? Put
Analog.
on some vinyl and we just play games. And some of the games are games that we did when my children were much younger, and now they're young women. But you know what? We still have so much fun in doing that. And that time together, I can't even measure it compared to some family trips we've been on. That time together is just so precious, and it fills my heart, and it's a memory that sustains me until the next time we get together.
Yeah. So it's not complicated. It's just really, really hard to do in the world. The world isn't designed well for that right now.
Yeah. And I know we always, look down upon young people, but I think they recognize that themselves. Because I see groups of young people playing board games. And my son and his girlfriend, they both just turned 30. And to celebrate our 30th birthday, they got a big group together and they had a boggle tournament, right?
Sure.
Like, isn't that wonderful? Like to know, like they realize that brings them such joy and fun. They don't need to do anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where are we? Where are we? Getting the toolbox. We good with the toolbox? Anything else? I mean, anything else?
It depends how much you want. So I thought of there's a few others. If you want a couple of quick ones that help people. So so a lot of my company name Mindful Wisdom. Basically, when I started out, it was all about mindfulness. I kind of had one trick pony, which was teaching people mindfulness. Along the way, 10 years, I learned there's an awful lot of wisdom out there already. And, a lot of my early influence was Buddhism. And there's some great, again, as a philosophy, not as a religion. You can find a lot of good stuff there. And then, part way through the journey, I discovered Stoicism. And so the Stoic philosophy presents some really helpful tools for all of us, teachers included, in the modern world. And so, the Stoic philosophy, it's underpinned by this very simple parsing of your world. There are things in your control, and there are things not in your control. Why would you give any of your energy to things not in your control? So things not in your control, what the Trump administration does, what any politician does, what the weather does, what the traffic does, what other people choose to believe or say, what people write comments in the feeds about, not in your control. The parents of the children themselves are not really in your control. Even our own children at home are not really in our control. And so things that are in our control is my mindset, which we've talked about, my self-awareness, the words that come out of my mouth, my behavior. Am I coming at this from a place of heart or from hammer? My bedtime, my, how I take care of myself, what I eat, what I do for myself, how I prime my brain before I come into an environment, before I walk into the classroom. These are all in my control. They feel tiny, but that's it. Yeah. They are tiny, but that's your circle of control. So that's the first, tool I would take from Stoicism. And then linked to that, very similarly, was at the end of the day, all you can ever do is play your role well. You look around and see how everybody else is doing on all their feeds, or look at another classroom and how they've got the easy class or they've got a harder class. You got the class you got.
Those are the cards you've been dealt, right?
Those are the cards you've been dealt.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how are you going to play them?
Yeah.
And can you play it? And it still might be ugly. Yeah. You might have some challenges going on at home. You might have some challenges going on with your health. Roy and I both have had some health challenges. I don't know if you have as well. And so health challenges color your view. And so how do you face those? Whatever those challenges are, can I walk through this path with grace, humility, compassion, courage, vulnerability where I can? Still, all of those are in my control. And this is, the Stoic philosophy is very pragmatic around all of that, as just parsing your world and then owning the part that's in your control, owning it fully. And in doing so, you actually resume some sense of control again in a world that around you is out of control.
And I'm going to ask another question that if you could answer in 1 minute, you'd be making millions, right? But it's how do we get people to that point? Because I think this is not based on a scientific study. It's just my own life experiences watching people. 80% of the things they get worked up about they're beyond their control. They're outside of them. Right?
Absolutely. Drama.
Right. It's all drama. It really is. Yeah. Some of it, okay, you can control that. But most of it, people are just, whether they're stuck in traffic, whatever it is. So how do we get them to that magical spot where they go, whatever, I'm safe, I'm alive, I'm healthy, I'll get home for dinner, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, many of your listeners will be in Canada, like here in BC, like we just, that we live here alone, we won the lottery.
Yeah.
So how do you get people from there? So it's not easy. Yeah. This is what wisdom traditions set out to do, and religions, for better or for worse, set out to do thousands of years ago. They recognized the human condition. And, that human condition is one, we have sort of a dark side that helps us survive when things are, right to the edge, fight or flight. And so there's a lot of drama that comes with that, but that was a survival mechanism. We also have a brain that's big enough to notice and be self-aware and actually shift to a place of not pure reptilian survival and just latching out at everything that jumps our way. And we have an emotional intelligence, and we have a rational conscious mind. And so the Stoic philosophy, just as one simple one, is elevating wisdom. It's elevating that conscious thought to notice the human condition, how easy it is to become sensitive to all of this, to take it so personally, to have your ego threatened by all of this. And wisdom would say, we're all in this together. We're all getting through this experience. Can we elevate above that? And I think, how do you get people to do that? How do I get myself to do that? Is I have to rinse and repeat over and over and over till that becomes the neural pathway that I reach for quicker and quicker rather than the reactive. So I'll still get frustrated with traffic. I still get frustrated with my kids. I am human, and I will be to the the bitter end. Can I catch that awareness early and then go to wisdom as opposed to drama? And telling everybody how terrible my day was. Can I go to the wisdom of it? And then the Stoics go one last piece, which is, nature, this is their philosophy, gave us virtue. Isn't that
Yeah,
nice? And so
yeah.
virtue, which virtue do I have access to in this moment that will help me? So patience. Do I have patience? Compassion. Can I be compassionate for all the other people who are sitting in this traffic and they don't want to be here either, as opposed to we're all going to just nose our way in front of the other, thinking I am more important.
There was a comment I read in the New York Times last week. It was an eye-opener for me. And it was actually an interview with Sean Penn. And he said, I get so worked up about humanity. I really do. And that's probably the biggest stressor to me. And he said he hates humanity. He loves humans. Yeah, I like that perspective.
I haven't
right?
heard that.
And it's
Nice.
true. I like people. I do. But humanity sometimes, but I can't control humanity,
Can't.
right? And that was, wow, okay.
But each one of us, as we leave this podcast, will bump into somebody, another human. And can you make their day?
Yeah.
Can you smile?
Yeah.
Can you make your little corner of the world a little richer, a little brighter? And if every human did that, humanity would be in a really good place.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, like, what else have we got?
Yeah.
That's my role. That's all I got.
Well, it's interesting because in the classroom, in the morning I would meet my students at the door. I'd greet them, say, "Hey, how are you?" And it was, "Hi." I give them a smile. Some of them would want to give me a fist bump. And even when I was kind of down, as I didn't have a good morning getting up, and I was late or I'm behind in things, I tried to elevate them. But
Sure.
by elevating my students,
Yes.
I
Beautiful.
elevated myself.
Yes.
And I think sometimes when we're looking at this thing, especially from the lens of a teacher, we're asked to do these things with students, where to help your students to become more resilient. Well, if I'm struggling, how do I do that? And maybe the idea in working with my students is I'm going to help them. I'm going to bring them along this journey. But as I bring them along this journey and share knowledge about how to find opportunities to be resilient, I'm learning with them. And when you're learning together, that's a stronger bond, and it's a connection that elevates everyone.
And it's very human. Now they recognize that you aren't this perfect teacher, this sort of crafted human who is superior in all ways. Like we were saying before we started the podcast, like we're all walking together, maybe some of us one step ahead, but only on that day.
Yeah.
And the next day, some days your students
They might see you stumble. That's okay.
Yeah, they might see you
As walk,
stumble,
right?
and
Yeah.
can we remember that and go through that with them? And I think as you just beautifully described, as we try and lift somebody else up, it lifts us. And as you try and teach somebody, like as I'm here sharing my ideas, you got to know there's a part of my brain saying note to self, right? Like these things that I still need to work on. I'm not executing perfectly. I know this, but I'm not executing because I'm human. So keep at it, Scott.
Yeah.
And so when we're looking at being resilient and the environment, and in the environment, I'm talking the social condition around you, whether it be in the classroom, in your home, those are the things that, in our discussion, we've already talked, some of those things are out of your control. But then how does the environment add to you being resilient, or how does it detract from you being resilient?
So psychologists have played with this, and so have magicians, right? And you may have seen some of the ways that, a magician they used to do these shows where they would have somebody and they'd have them in the audience, and in the audience they'd pick them out and they'd ask them to pick a card or something or pick a word, and they would know, and they would have written it down, and they would get the audience member to pick the exact word that they have in their mind. And then they show you what happened in the 45 minutes that the audience member traveled along the subway line and all their different ways that they went through there. And in that whole journey, they had staged the word multiple times, which their unconscious mind was picking up. And so their unconscious mind picked up that word multiple times. It had a reference connection. And the magician understands psychology sufficiently to know that you are primed and you are ready for that.
Right.
So does our environment matter? Hugely. You are the composite of the 5 people or 6 people you were closest to, right? Your mindsets and attitudes. That's another, again, referenced study. So environment matters, and more probably today than ever in a world that is throwing a lot of stuff out at us. You, Martin, garden, that's an environment.
Yeah.
I can't remember. You certainly play records. I can't remember your association with music, Roy.
Well, I collect vinyl.
Okay.
And then listening to vinyl is one of the things. I love going to concerts.
Sure.
The last concert I went to see Neil Young. For me, it was one of those lifelong sort of bucket list, so to speak. But I went with my family.
Yeah.
And I was able to take my love of music and then share that with my family. And it just completely elevated that experience.
So the classroom environment is something that you have some control over. And I know you put some mind into that, Roy, when you were a teacher. And just like how does the environment, does it create an environment for stability? And let's bring it back to the teachers first.
I believe in that's the foundation. It's always how I talk to the parents in September. The classroom environment, right? The curriculum, all that stuff, it doesn't matter. It'll fall into place. But if you worry about that before you've built that foundation of the environment, you want this warm, caring place that comes in where kids feel like they're part of a family. I think that's key.
So then come back to the teacher. What's their environment? Who are the people that they connect with? Yeah. And do they bring them up or do they bring them down? And we all have people in our lives who we're connected to, and they may not bring us up, but we are still connected to them, and we love and support them to a degree, and help them. But your surroundings, is it a surrounding that lifts you and takes care of you, nurtures you, nourishes you, or are your eyes on a screen that is prompting you with messages, much like that magician? And I do honestly think that some of at the high political levels, that they understand what the magician understood, that if you say these things enough times and you prime people, it becomes true. Our minds start to take things in. And so I'm very careful. So I think environment matters hugely. And coming back to, understanding yourself, your values, your family's values, what's most important for you. And I think we're all, guardians or warriors defending our little environments and these, mental, emotional, family environments from a world that wants our attention. And what does that look like for each of us? And being very choosy about that, and I'd say even being a bit fierce and subversive at times. Like, you don't have to follow everything that everybody does if it isn't healthy for you.
Yes.
There's a book my wife just gave me to read called The Art of Gathering. And it's just about choosing the people you're with sometimes. Don't feel you have to invite everyone to every situation if you're putting a party on or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Really think it out and think it through and go, well, who do I want here? Who's going to make me feel better when I get together, right?
Yeah, and that will be a beautiful evening for everybody.
Right?
Yes. Right? Like, I've been to those, and hopefully I've hosted a few.
Well, it's interesting. I retired. Martin retired. And in that retirement, it was a
Retired from teaching.
Retired from teaching. Yes.
Nice correction. Thank you. I was going to challenge you on both of that.
Because in that retirement, there was, I'm letting go of this environment that I loved and has buoyed me so much. I mean, I went to school and felt like, it's wonderful. I felt like a rock star so often going to Ridgeway, and the students were so happy to see me. And then, oh my gosh, I have to. It's almost like I'm ready for another retirement tour. Go back to the school.
Right.
But when we started this podcast, it was becoming a lifelong learner again, learning more. And this social connection, which is a different social connection than I had when I was working as a teacher, but this is so fulfilling. And again, I see this as like, having this discussion today with you. I was looking forward to it. I thought about it, the questions and everything. And when I see that, I just, again, I put myself up on a high-flying disc, if you want to say, or I've elevated myself, and I see that creating new opportunities in your life can do wonderful things for how you feel about yourself and that resilience.
Well, I mean, I don't think either of you have retired.
Yeah,
I think that was a mindset when you in the industrial age, when you worked on a factory or assembly line or corporate job that just was exhausting, and then at some point you were done, and then you had that phase of your life. And I think we're privileged to live in a time where you can reinvent and reinvent and reinvent. And I think life, again, personal, opinion, not a fact. I think people do best when they're doing something similar to you, as they're growing and learning and trying new things, and finding that ongoing creativity and passion and something that they care about more than just themselves.
Jane Fonda calls it the third act, and I like that, right?
Third act.
Third acts are often the best in a play, right?
Yeah. It's not. It's about more than just you anymore. You've kind of come. You've learned a bunch of lessons, and now you're coming back. And this podcast is very much rich in that way. Like, how do we give back to teachers some of the lessons that you've learned?
Yeah.
So, if we could do one thing, or say one thing that teachers could start immediately to help them with their resilience, what would we do?
So it's going to vary.
Yes,
and
I know it's so hard.
Because it's going to vary.
We want that one thing again.
Of course you do. Yeah,
That's one thing.
the whole back to the Holy Grail. If there's just one thing, so I think for each person, including yourselves, what's the one thing that if you do regularly, you are better? You're better, and that could be sleep. That could be your exercise. That could be social. That could be a hobby, or passion, interest, whatever that is. That if you do that regularly, you are a better version of yourself. And when you don't do it regularly, and you can go quite a while without it, you can go months, some people even years, and you get by, but you're not as good as you're just not you in your full capacity. And I think we started talking about resilience. So, if we want to drill it down to one thing, I think for each of us, we know if I just go to bed on time, like for a lot of people, it can be this simple. If you really wanted to have a universal for most people is sleep.
Yeah.
If you just got enough sleep, if you turned the screens off earlier, did some nice wind down routine, stretching and music, vinyl or not,
Read a book,
that's what
maybe.
our household generally looks like. Read a book,
Yeah.
have a tea, whatever that scenario looks like, journal, reflect, something that's analog. It's not digital anymore. It isn't about excitement and information and learning anymore. By the time you get to that stage of the evening is really a time, as a species, you look back, that was a winding down. Like, day is done. And so how do you unwind and then have a great sleep? And then now you're ready for the next day.
Yeah.
For some people, sleep isn't as big of a deal. Then it's finding the one thing that for you.
Play that guitar you want to play, whatever it is.
Play it is. Some of us get grumpy. I'm a mountain biker. And, if I can't get out on my bike, like ideally twice a week, I start to get restless. And it's almost, again, I'll call it a good habit.
Yeah.
It's an
good
addictive
habits.
it's an addictive habit. Some people it might be their yoga.
Yeah.
Some people it's their guitar. It's a long run. I got out for my short run twice a week, but I didn't get my long run. And it's the long run
Missing in you. You need
that
that.
it's like I really don't hit this other level, whatever that is, until I'm after 10K, and 15K, 20K. Now I'm finally getting into this groove and this space where my mind goes quiet and my body finds its space. So I think for each of us to know what that is and then honor it. Like, don't feel indulgent or self-indulgent or overly like that you don't deserve this, you don't have time for this. This is what makes you your best.
Right.
These are teachers we're talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
Teachers are raising the next generation, or at least helping bring the next generation along, and my kids are a product of that. And I give many kudos to the teachers who helped them. But even whether it's the teachers or the parents, some of the people listening to this are parents as well. And so as parents, what have you got in the tank, and what juice do you have, and what are you role modeling to your kids?
No, for sure. I mean, before we wrap up, is there anything we could talk for hours? This has been just so wonderful,
Yes.
Scott. But is there anything on resiliency that you just want to get in there that you didn't say, that you want to have the listeners hear, that you feel this is my last chance for this episode? We can always have you come back again, which would be wonderful.
Thinking what I might say before we came here, the last piece I might just offer is, and it's a variation on the mindset piece, but you can choose the emotional state, or you can influence the emotional state that you're in. And probably the simplest is gratitude. I think it's pretty easy in the world these days to see the problems. It's pretty easy to complain, about the kids, about the world, about the weather, the climate, the tariffs, the economy, the cost of housing, cost of food, cost of gas. Like there's so much out there. And we've hinted at this along the way, but gratitude is a choice.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes to this idea of the dark wolf and the good wolf that both live inside of us. And you got to feed the good wolf. The dark wolf feeds very aggressively. It's the fight or flight. That's the fear side of us. And it's very alive and, it will feed itself. The good wolf takes a conscious effort. And you in the story, I won't bother with the whole story. You can find it, but the story is that both wolves reside in all of us all the time.
Yes.
You have to feed the good wolf constantly, and if you do, this is neuroplasticity. It's stronger, and gratitude is probably the easiest way to get back to that. When in doubt, was it Mr. Rogers who always said, in any accident scene, look for the helpers. Right? In any tragedy, he would always orient himself. And I think it came from his mother, maybe if I have the story right. But there's always some goodness, even in the worst situations, as there's helpers there showing their deepest humanity and helping people. Can we be grateful for those people? In any situation that's going on in our world, there's almost always things that we can be grateful for. And can we really heartfelt experience those and bring them in and kind of bring the energy, bring the level of hope and possibility up again, doing our little bit.
I love the way you end on gratitude, because I don't think there's enough of that in our modern world. And I've found whenever I've traveled to poorer places in the world, they show gratitude far more than we tend to do, right?
Yes.
They could have nothing, and they're just so grateful and helpful and sharing, right, that we've kind of lost along the way.
Yeah, I've discussed with my students before about developing an attitude of gratitude, and just and I know I see more and more of it in the school. In the schools that I've been in, where especially with the social emotional learning, teachers having their students create gratitude books, things that they're grateful for, and it's funny because just helping our students identify what to be grateful for when they say, well, I don't have a fast car. Well, but do you have let's go down. Do you have lunch today? Yes, I do. Oh, you'd be grateful for having this lunch, or grateful for the little things. And as you start to focus on the little things, the veneer of gratitude gets deeper.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah. All right. So, and the last question I have for you is, what advice or suggestions you have for someone who may want to point their career in a different direction, who want to have change?
That's a big one.
That's a big one. You have some experience from that?
Yeah.
You've recreated yourself?
Good.
Yeah, think carefully before you do, because it's a bit of a leap. I think you have to know who you are.
Yeah.
I think it starts with that.
It's going to be scary, right?
It's going to be scary, and so I think you need to know that going in, and that doesn't mean like many of us do hard things for fun on the weekends, right? That are we go like multi-day backpacking, or we take on challenges. Some people may do Homes for Humanity, and they go to other parts of the world, and they do hard things for fun. And so if you are going to make a career change, just going in with the whole mindset that you're basically signing up for adventure and hard things, and can you have that spirit going through it? But I think it's being clear about why. Most people, as if it's more later in their career, there's usually something that they didn't do earlier, and they're realizing I've been on the wrong path all this time. And then, really listening and getting clarity around that. I worked with a coach. It's good to have somebody, if you can afford it, or even just somebody who can help you talk it through. Our minds, coming back to resilience, our minds can be both faulty in terms of exaggerating the consequences or potential pitfalls, and biased towards the hopeful side. Or we can also be underestimate ourselves in, our ability. So if you think of all the things that you've grown and learned through wherever you are in your life, you survived high school. You're like just that alone, right? Like you managed through that.
Talk about resiliency.
Talk about resiliency, and most of us were somewhat broken or affected by the high school experience. Fortunately, it's way better these days. At least it has been for my kids. I don't see as many broken kids or hurt, kids in that environment. But you've survived that. You survived whatever any post high school work you did, any early career, marriage, changing jobs, changing locations. So we've survived. So most of us are far more resilient than we realize. So I think it's recognizing how strong and resilient we are, but then recognizing that this will be hard. Just like going to school, well, we romanticize and remember some of the better times, and we forget the hard work that was there.
Yes.
And so getting realistic about that. But I do see myself and others as you age, you are a bit more risk adverse. You've sort of taken your lumps and you've got your comfort zone, and you kind of like your comfort zone. Whereas, in your 20s or teenagers, they haven't got anything. And so the sky's the limit. I'll sleep on a floor in my buddy's place. That's fine by me. Yeah. And I can put up with that. And you and I wouldn't want that now. No. But it's just balancing all of that before and having a plan, I think, as you're going into it. Some will say, and I'm not a big fan of it, but just, burn the boats, right? Like that you have no back, like you only have plan A, like don't leave yourself plan B. And there's a whole philosophy around that if you're fully invested in plan A and you're making that choice, you burn the boats, you're going to make it work. Yeah. Yeah. So there is a rightness to that. The self-development stuff, I've sampled a lot of it. I've come to realize it really works well for the author, and it might work well for a few other people, but it isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all. Yes. And so if you're not a burn the boats kind of person, that feels a bit severe. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it actually creates more fight or flight. It does, doesn't it? And you're actually not at your best for that.
Yeah. All right. So Scott, where can people find more about the work that you do? So if people want to find out more about what you do, where can they get that information?
Of course, there's a website, mindfulwisdom.ca, www.mindfulwisdom.ca.
We'll post a link.
Yeah, post a link. Yeah. So you can find that there. I do put out a newsletter about every 3 weeks. It was going to be a bi-weekly newsletter that comes out every 3 or 4 weeks because it's hard to and I just keep telling myself it's a bi-weekly newsletter, but it just doesn't come out that often. Okay. And so you can sign up for that there. If you like these ideas, I try and share something, meaningful, a nugget that people can use on the website. So you can sign up for that there. I'm on LinkedIn a little bit. Okay. So you can find me on LinkedIn. And I try and post very positively and constructively because even LinkedIn has become a bit more toxic than it used to be in the past, just with all the political stuff. Almost all of the other social platforms I just don't go to. Yeah. So that's where you can find me.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. This has
been thank you so much.
Fabulous conversation.
Yeah, grateful to be here. Thanks. And hopefully this helps your listeners. And again, I don't know if you guys get feedback on these things.
We do. Yeah.
We'll so I'd be happy to get any feedback and any suggestions because I think this is
it's all people about learning, right?
Well, it's all about learning, but I think this is important. I think the fact that we're even talking about this for teachers, for humans, I think people need this.
They do.
And we need more of it.
More than ever.
Right. Mm-hmm. And we're going to keep needing it. Yeah. So I think it's something that we're all needing to keep working at.
That's why I still like the podcast idea rather than just video and other things. I think it's something you put on, it's in the background, you're listening to it, and I think it calms you in a way that maybe reading about something or watching something on the screen will not do, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that was great. Are you feeling resilient now?
Oh, I'm feeling calm.
Yeah.
And, I've learned some things that I kind of knew, but I forgot. So it was lovely talking to Scott.
Yeah.
And just a reminder of what I think is really important is control, knowing what you can control is you.
Yeah. And I like the idea that he said, we should have these conversations all the time. Like, you don't just open up one book and you're resilient for life, right? It's an ongoing
What?
thing. I know, Roy.
It's like, I say, some kids just said, I've only read one book. And I said, I hope you read the right one.
Right? It's an ongoing conversation, right?
Yes.
It really is.
It is.
I encourage people to have these conversations, not just here as part of this After the Bell podcast, but at home with friends, with other people, to constantly be thinking about it, just about who you are as a human, right? Dealing with all these things. And when you talked about the episode, which was Resiliency, staying afloat in stormy weather, it made me think of this guy I follow on TikTok, Drew. He's
Drew?
Yeah, Drew. He's one of the only guys
Drew.
that I've been following consistently for 107 days. He left New Zealand and he's sailing to Victoria. He just got back to Victoria after 107 days in this little X-wing boat. And to me, talk about resiliency, right? He was staying afloat in stormy seas sometimes.
That's a lot of time spent on your own.
Yeah.
A lot of reflection.
And there was moments you could tell. He's a very open, honest guy who is dealing with his own resiliency all the time. And you can see that within him, that there's a lot of reflection going on, and a lot of moments that it's not just a dream the whole trip, right? So it was.
I mean, you could have a lot of self-doubt.
Yeah.
And then you could get angry, but who do you get angry at?
I don't know. And he doesn't dare, like, even when there were beautiful places near Fiji or near Tahiti, I guess it was. The weather was beautiful, but he doesn't jump off the boat because it's just taking a chance. There's no one else around, right? So he can't even go for a nice swim in the ocean.
Oh, my gosh.
But it was really good. And it was just about resiliency, and I think it fits the theme of this episode, and I hope everybody got something out of this.
He was buoyant in stormy weather. It's a good way to end it.
It is. We'll see you next time, listeners.
Right.
Thank you. This podcast is organic, taking shape with each episode. Building resiliency for teachers everywhere.
That sounds great.
And our website is stuntbrothers.ca.
That's stuntbrothers.ca.
We will chat again.
After the bell.